If you're happy with the same old ways of dating,
If you enjoy sucking at communication,
and you have no desire to improve your romantic life, then our podcast might not be for you.
but if you want some out-of-the-box ideas to deepen your current relationships,
broaden your sexual horizons,
develop a better understanding of yourself,
or learn more about non-monogamy,
Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jase,
I'm Emily.
and I'm Dedeker.
and this is the Multiamory podcast.
Forcing me to form myself to fit.
On this episode of the Multiamory podcast, we are talking about feeling special. What does it mean to feel special? We're talking about preserving that specialness and uniqueness you have in a relationship, but when you have multiple relationships, when it's not just because you're the only one. So to lead us into that, what is the feeling of specialness, guys?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I mean, we have like the euphemism for specialness, which is kind of like, oh, he's a little
kind of-
special.
Yeah.
Not the most complimentary one. I don't think that's what we're talking about.
I don't think
mean,
that's what we're
it's
talking
what?
about today.
It's like to feel
Well,
special.
There's like a traditional meaning of specialness, which is like, okay, in relationships, what is it going to mean? It's going to mean like sexual exclusivity. It's going to mean like specific physical affection and emotional intimacy, like reserved for one human being.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like normally the way that we seek or kind of attach specialness to people tends to be very much wrapped up in our relationships, and not just romantic relationships. You can have like a best friend.
Your best friend, yeah.
Exactly. Like who's special because of, because they're your best friend, because maybe you spend the most time with them out of all your friends, or you can share the most with them, or you feel the most intimate with them. Then the same thing can apply to traditional relationships. Is usually it's kind of like, well, you're special because you are my romantic partner. Because
Right, you're the
I
one
only get
person
to
I've
choose
chosen
one-
to, yeah.
Yeah, you're the one person that I've chosen to kind of fill my romance slot. Not to be reductive with it or anything, but that's kind of how we tend to, historically attribute specialness to someone. But I kind of still want to pick apart exactly what specialness is. I mean, there is that quality to it, this idea of like, this person who stands out from the crowd. Like, but as far as the feeling of within yourself of feeling special, like what is that actually? Is it just like feeling unique? Is it feeling?
Yeah,
like,
I think that
It's like this fuzzy, warm feeling in the pit of my
Yeah,
stomach.
is it just fuzziness?
Well, no, I mean, I think that the part of it is feeling unique, and that is something that sort of monogamous or like single best friend model of looking at it does tap into. That is you're unique because you're the only person in this role. But if we take that a bit further, I still think that uniqueness is an important part of it. That you're special because you are the only person who is this sum of things that you are and relates to people the way that you do. But I think it's more than just uniqueness. I think that there's also this quality of feeling valued, of feeling like you're important to somebody else.
Yeah.
That you're not, I could be a unique snowflake that nobody likes. You know what I mean? Like,
You're a shitty snowflake.
Right. Like if we're all individual, unique snowflakes, then, it's sort of like if everyone's special, then nobody's special kind of idea, which gets tossed around sometimes. So I think that more than just being unique, it's this idea of being valued by someone else, or perhaps even just valued by yourself, since we have talked about kind of dating yourself and the importance of that.
So a question I have, which is kind of a broad subject, it might be better for another podcast episode or maybe somebody's dissertation, but that feeling of specialness or that feeling of being valued, is that a primary motivating factor in why we seek romantic relationships at all, or intimate relationships at all? I mean, outside of like socialization and biology, is it that? Is it, because we want to feel special, because we want to feel valued, that's maybe one of the main reasons why we seek these kind of intimate relationships?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tricky question because I feel like in answering that question, you end up asking a whole lot more questions, and you know, I don't know. I guess kind of, I would say you would run the risk of sort of pathologizing seeking relationships at all.
Well, that's not necessarily what I was implying, that it's coming from a place of some kind of like mental illness or like some kind of need for validation. And sure, people do seek romantic relationships for unhealthy reasons, you know, definitely. But it's kind of like that sense of like, but if we're all kind of in the same boat, it doesn't necessarily mean that one person is sick and one person is not.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
It's just a question of why is it that people tend to do these things, or why is it that people like seek specialness at all? Like, is it actually the deciding factor?
Why do we even enjoy feeling special?
Yeah. Is it just because it's warm and fuzzy, or why?
Well,
So,
I mean, I would
Like kind of self-affirming or like self-validating, or is it like like self-actualizing maybe?
I mean, it's tricky because it goes into our brain chemistry and all of that too. Because it's, if feeling special makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, like you said, Emily, like that means that there are chemicals in our brain that are reacting positively to this, which means that evolutionarily, theoretically, there was some benefit to seeking out this feeling, or there's a good reward for feeling this way. I mean, it's pretty complicated once we start going that road. I think this would be a good dissertation topic.
I don't know, because I feel like, I mean, to kind of pick up that torch and run with it.
Yeah.
If someone is special to you, you're more likely to want to care for them.
Sure.
And so if you flip that, if you know that someone thinks that you're special, they're more likely to care for you, which means you have a better support network, which means you're more likely to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if we took it to like sibling rivalry, if there's a bunch of children, it's more comforting to know that mom thinks you're special, whether that's that you're special in relation to your siblings, or you're special just in relation to everyone else.
In the world.
You know that if mom, everyone else in the world, if mom thinks you're special, mom's going to take care of you, which means I'm going to survive. And so maybe this is all like super, super reductive evolutionary psychology, but I think that's where the thread lies, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so
on this week's episode of Multi-Anthropology.
I know. So if any of you out there are working on coming up with an idea for your doctoral thesis, feel free to take that one. Just give us a little shout out. Let us know so we can read the paper. That would be great. If the three of us read your dissertation, we'll basically like double the number of people who read a dissertation. So that would also make you feel good. No, that's actually.
I can tell you just
true.
read the Art of Nonconformity, didn't you?
I did, and he talks about that.
Yeah, that's where you got that from.
Yep, it's absolutely true. So let's get down to the real life practical applications here. Brass tacks, yes. So what we decided we were going to start with when talking about maintaining that feeling of specialness and of value for your partners, we were going to start by talking about some maybe not so great ways to go about that.
Yeah, because the thing is that obviously, we're so used to the mindset being like, okay, well, you are my one romantic partner, so that means you're special because you are the only one. You're my one and only. It's in every single freaking love song.
Right.
So, but of course, when you're not the one and only, when your partner has multiple partners, or if you have multiple partners, then you can't rely on just that as being the thing that causes specialness. If it's like, well, you're okay, sure, you love me, you kiss me, you have sex with me, but like you also love her and kiss her and have sex with her. You also love him and kiss him and have sex with him. So what makes me special? Yeah. And so, which is a big underlying, for a lot of people, it's a huge obstacle into non-monogamy and into polyamory, is, well, like, how do I continue this feeling of specialness when other people are getting something similar to what I'm getting? And so a lot of people kind of will create some knee-jerk reactions to try to create specialness in ways that are not so awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's go through some of those. So the first one that kind of kind of is related to all of these, but it's basically the idea that in order to feel special, I need to be put first at all times, regardless of the situation. Meaning, in terms of your time or your effort or your thoughts or, all those things and a lot of couples who go into opening up their relationship from being monogamous fall into this one because it's the most similar to what they have been doing and what they've kind of been taught about what it is that makes each other special is simply because you are the one who has the role of husband or wife or person you live with or primary partner or whatever it's going to be. And so they'll think, oh, we're opening up, but we're going to try to maintain this feeling of specialness.
Yeah.
And this one's a tricky one because it seems good in theory to the people doing it, but it's pretty much impossible to actually maintain with, really, I would argue it's impossible to, really successfully feel special this way. Not only without hurting other people along the way, which is the big side effect of this one, but I would say even with hurting all those people along the way, you're not actually going to feel more special in the long run. That this isn't a long-term solution, like our episode last week on sustainability.
Yeah.
So how about another one, you guys?
So these next three that we have on our list are kind of all tied together. So some people kind of tie up their specialness into, well, I'll feel special if you're willing to cancel on your other partner for me,
Sure.
if I ask you to. Or I'll feel special if I know that I'm getting more time than you're giving to this other person.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, and really, it kind of comes down to I'll feel special either if I'm getting more or if I'm getting the most or if you are willing to take something away from someone else.
Yeah.
And again, this can be so subtle. It can be something like that. It can be well, if I just said it, would you cancel a date, that you have planned with someone else? And that means that if you did it, if I just asked you to and you did it, that means that I'm special to you and I'm important to you. And it's so tricky because yes, on paper, that kind of makes sense. If you would be willing to just drop everything when this person, if this person says jump and you say how high,
right?
That does seem to imply there is some priority and specialness, but it's kind of at the cost of ethics and at the at the cost of kind of being a decent human being.
Yeah.
Is what I feel.
Yeah.
And the thing is that this also comes, this also is attached to this idea of needing to be put first. It's this implication of my requests need to be put first, my feelings need to be put first, my desires need to be put first before anybody else's. And there's an interesting point that Franklin Vo and Eve Rickert made in their book More Than Two. They point out the fact that the thing is that everyone at some point needs to feel like they're going to be put first. And it doesn't mean all the time, but at some point in every relationship you have, that's going to be a fundamental part of the relationship. Someone's going to need to feel like their needs are being put first. And in order for it to work, there can't be any kind of inflexible rule around one person always gets their needs put first. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, and I would say that even not just that at some point in this relationship, everyone will need to be put first at some point, but I would say even to have a relationship that's not sort of starting off with a handicap or with this, guillotine
What
hanging
kind of
over its
handicap?
neck is to go into a relationship where that person understands that if something does come up where they do need to be a top priority or, where they do need to come first, that is a thing that they could get. That it's not again, with the too prescriptive of a hierarchy, a predefined hierarchy. It's I could enter into a relationship with you, but if you tell me right from the start, you're never ever going to come first, even if you don't tell me this explicitly, which is maybe even worse, but, you're never going to come first, you're never going to be prioritized. It doesn't matter what the situation is. That's obviously going to that's going to handicap our relationship. That's going to handicap
You're talking about
trust.
extenuating circumstances where a family member dies or you have a big problem or you're stuck on the 405 or whatever and you
Sure.
need you need someone dearly and desperately.
Sure, and it doesn't even have to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be so, devastating
dire.
as that. But it could just be like, hey, something came up and I really need help. I would like to know that I would sometimes get prioritized if the circumstances, made sense for that.
Sure, yeah.
And so I think that, and so really, like, if we take these ideas of being put first all the time that people do to try to preserve this specialness, these are basically the sort of the path of good intentions that leads to things like veto rules.
Yeah, yeah.
Where essentially an entire other relationship is at the mercy of another one, which is just not a healthy and honestly not a sustainable thing, even for that relationship that does have the veto rule. And this is something that Franklin Vo's book, The Game Changer, is kind of all about that. How that veto rule is put there to preserve one relationship, and really, if it ever gets enacted, all it does is hurt that relationship more than it protects it. Possibly hurts it to the point of not being fixable.
The last thing we wanted to talk about in terms of specialness fails is it ethical to ask your partner to reserve a particular act, say like a sexual act, or a certain activity, or, I don't know, like a location, like, hey, we only can go to this specific bar and you're not allowed to go with anyone else for you. And then, to say like, okay, those specific things make me feel special, so I need those within our relationship. Is that an ethical thing to ask of your partner? And I think
I go back and forth on that one.
Yeah?
Well, yeah, I go back and forth because it's... I don't know, because, I mean, so for instance, you might be like, maybe, there is a particular sexual position that is very special, some kind of crazy acrobatic sexual position that you and your partner discovered one night, and you're like, wow,
So
this is the
acrobatic.
best, this is so great, I love this. But then maybe you're like, you know what? I don't want you to do this with anyone else. Like, the idea of you doing this particular, like, specific acrobatic sex position that, like, I associate with us, if, like, I don't want you to do it with someone else.
Yeah.
Is that okay to ask? Does that help you kind of feel a little more secure and special if it's like, well, I know my partner only does this with me?
Yeah.
Or is that something that you really should let go of?
Yeah.
Well, I think the question that I would ask is, do you feel that that's then how you should proceed on the other side too? Say your partner, dates someone new or sleeps with someone new who they discover some amazing sex move through that. Do you want them to only do that with them and never try to introduce that to you, or like something we've talked about as being a benefit of polyamory is that you're learning from other people, whether it's romantically or socially or sexually, and bringing that back to your other relationships, that you're all kind of growing and collaborating and bringing things, bringing back knowledge. And if you're gonna be like, well, no, we do this special thing, or you do this special thing to me, and I don't want you to do that to anyone else.
Yeah.
Like, do you want that to go the other way too? And I feel like that's a harder. Most people would be like, oh, I don't know, like that's.
Well, I'm going to play a tiny bit of devil's advocate here, just because of a situation that I read. I think this was on the poly subreddit. I forget where I read this, but a girl, she was in a poly relationship, and she was a sub.
Okay.
But she and her partner, like, they were comfortable doing BDSM things with other partners as well. That wasn't restricted to just their relationship. What bothered her is that her dom bought a collar for her, and then ended up using the collar on someone else. So that one falls kind of into this gray area, I feel, where it's kind of like, yeah, we're okay with the act of, like, you being dominant to someone else, or you collaring someone else, but it was in that, like, he had bought this specifically to use with her, and then also used it on someone else.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I mean, okay, like, just so you guys know, normally the sex toy rule, like, don't use the same sex toys on two people unless you're covering them with condoms.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of safety.
Like,
a collar is a little bit different.
Or if
obviously.
it's a toy that's disinfectable, and not all are.
Yeah.
But, if it is. But But I would say, though, that ethically, this is something that you would want to talk to both of these partners about.
For sure.
And the thing that's tricky about collars is that in the BDSM community, like, collaring is a
very symbolic
big deal. Like, buying a collar for someone is a big deal. So that's almost like, like getting someone an engagement ring and having someone else wear it for a while. Like,
damn.
it's, a collar is a big deal. So I think that's maybe a little, to me, that would fall on one side of the line of like, you shouldn't use that collar with somebody else if that's something that was specifically presented to that person. Yeah, versus if you just like, it wasn't sort of like a symbolic collaring, but you just have a collar that you like to play with, that you have, and your partners know, like, this is your collar and you'll play with it sometimes. That's a different thing. But it's, so it's a gray area unless you know the specifics, and only the people in that relationship could know that. But so I think, for things like locations and activities and sexual positions or fetishes or whatever, that's kind of the question you need to ask, I think, is kind of what is it is this something I'm limiting just to limit something from other people, or is this something that's not going to take away from the experience this person can have with someone else? Like with the collar thing or a sex toy thing, if it's like, hey, this is our toy, don't use this one with anyone else.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty reasonable, because it's not a whole category of thing. It's just this one object, and you can go get another one.
Yeah. But that's the thing. But it's different if I'm like, okay, please don't use this toy with anyone else, versus please don't use this kind of toy at all with anyone else.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very different thing.
Yeah, I think that's where it starts to get a little.
Please don't do this activity of using toys with someone else. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Okay.
How exciting.
Let's talk about some ways that we can win the specialness game in a healthy, sustainable way.
All right, so one of the ways that you can make your partner feel special is you can express to your partner the things specifically that make them unique. So maybe they have a special glint in their eye that nobody else has. I don't know. No, but for like example, like maybe you guys love Harry Potter and you just like love it so much, and the two of you are the only two that like get to go to Harry Potter at Universal Studios together, and you guys just like share that, and that's something that nobody else shares. Or say the two of you love Legend of Zelda, like, whoa, oh my god, and you play Legend of Zelda together all the time. And expressing that to them and like making that known is something that can really make them feel special.
And it goes beyond just talking about, your shared interests, but also, talking about your special dynamic. It can be about the kind of sexual chemistry you guys have, or expressing to your partner, like, I like that we're able to really effectively communicate through these things, or I really like how, like, you stay so calm and you help me to stay calm. Like really expressing these very specific things that come up within your dynamic can really help to kind of reassure your partner that, you do value them and that they are special to you.
Yeah. And something to clarify about that, too, with Emily's example of going to, Harry Potter World or talking about Harry Potter or whatever, we're not saying, like before, where it's like, hey, you and me are the only people that can go to Harry Potter World, like, you can't go with somebody else. But
you not.
But more that it's that, like, hey, like, no one gets, like, being a Slitherpuff like you do, right? Like, it's more about that special, unique connection that the two of you have over this thing, not just because you're the only ones who do it, but that there's like a certain, like, you get it, you get that about me, or
you get that part of me.
Or like with Dedeker's example, it could be something else too, about that it's not even something so obviously unique from the outside. But it could be like, hey, I feel so safe being able to communicate my vulnerabilities with you in a way that I don't feel with other people, and that's a really unique, special thing for me, or something like that. That can be a really meaningful thing that both makes that person understand how they're special and unique, and also shows them that you value them.
And that kind of leads into our next thing.
Yeah, I was also just going to point out that Slitherpuff sounds like a new Pokemon.
It does, yes.
Some crazy crossover action here.
Well, no, it's part of
anyway,
this
so
this new quiz that's like going around that everyone's so excited about that you take.
It's like, what is your hybrid?
What's your hybrid house in Harry Potter? So you'll be like a Griffin Puff or a Ravendor, or whatever. It's like hybrids.
I was just about to say, like, do I care about that? But I was like, no, Emily cares about that.
Right.
Oh, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay, so anyway, so to bring it back, so specialness is not just, again, that snowflake factor. So it's not just like, well, Emily's special because she's really into Harry Potter and really into Zelda and also vegan and really dedicated to taking care of her body. Like, those are things that make Emily special. But the thing is, like, Emily is still going to be Emily in each of her relationships. She still brings that unique combination of things in each of her relationships. So, like, in another relationship, she's still going to talk about her love of Zelda or talk about vegan food or maybe take someone to yoga class.
Obviously.
But it's the specialness that shows up in the unique dynamic that is created between Emily and, like, whatever chemistry the other person brings is what makes the relationship unique. Like, I know Emily is all about Harry Potter, but that's never really come up in our relationship.
That's
not
true.
so much. That's not, I mean, sure, we share some nerdy things and we can talk about it, but it's not something that, like, we really passionately share together. But it does in other relationships. And again, like, these are all, like, silly examples with, like, Harry Potter and stuff like that.
But they can also be much more serious things.
Yes. Yeah, it can go into these much deeper things.
For sure.
And then the last one also, something that I especially often point out to couples who are just opening up their relationship and who are, like, really scared and really want to try to preserve that specialness. Sometimes the biggest factor you have in specialness is just your shared history.
Yeah.
Is all of the awesome things that you've done together and also all the really difficult, shitty times that you've lived through together. And that's something that, like, a new person who just comes along to go on a first date with your partner can't replace whatsoever. And obviously that's something that takes time to build. You have to have time to write that history. But that in itself carries so much huge weight. Like, my relationship with Jase, the stuff that we've gone through, both good and bad and just weird and Japanese, like, that's something that, like, I don't have in any other relationship. And so that's something that makes our relationship super special. But then also on the other side, in my other relationships, I've gone through also very different, positive, weird, all over the map kind of things that make those relationships special. So this is definitely a more long-term one, but it is one that does carry a lot of weight that kind of grows exponentially over time.
Emily, you were sharing something about this, about that, having that shared history and people that understand you.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with the two of you, you two are the people that know me the best in terms of, like, my polyamorous life. And so I know, like, and this is, like, more to do with friends, but it is kind of a nice way to bring it back to relationship anarchy and, like, show, like, hey, your friends can be very important and very special people in your lives, and, like, a way to make them understand that you're special, that they are special, is to let them know, like, how specifically they are in your lives. And, for example, the two of you are the only people who know, like, me and my polyamorous life as well as one possibly could.
Like your whole journey from beginning
from beginning to right now, exactly.
To right now, yeah.
Yeah, and I can't really speak to other people as easily about the whole thing as I can to you and get the same kind of advice about it as I could from the two of you. And so that's a very, like, special, unique thing and something I cherish in the two of you very much.
Aw.
Bah. I feel so special right now.
Yeah.
You should.
And then
Emily's going to
also...
take care of... Emily's more likely to take care of us and, like, bring us, vegan...
Oh, gosh, you're trying to bring it back to
brownies.
Our evolutionary biology.
God.
Some vegan brownies that she hunted on the plains.
Yes.
And then we're going to survive, and it's going to be great.
Yay.
And in going along with this, like, this is a nice segue into the idea that you also, in terms of making, helping your partner to feel valued, in addition to ways to feel unique, is to just, really be mindful of that and be sure not to take your older existing partners for granted. If you have that person who is so easygoing that nothing seems to faze them,
Yeah.
you know, to not take that for granted and say like, oh, well, then I don't have to worry so much about, you know, taking care of them or like making sure that they're okay because I know they're going to be always just kind of chill. Or, you know, or whatever it is in your relationship, or if it is just that, hey, we have so much history together, so I might not need to go as out of my way to like plan things with them or spend time with them. I know that, you know, this is something that I've been on both sides of. You know, I've definitely regretted not really making it as clear to a partner as I wish I had of, you know, how much they mattered to me and how much effort I did want to put into that relationship because it felt comfortable. So just sort of I guess sort of a word of caution, and also maybe, you know, something that's exciting to say like, hey, like keep that excitement there by not taking them for granted and really putting effort into those existing relationships too.
For sure.
So lastly, we just wanted to say that for some of these things, especially if you're going through a time of really not feeling special, or your partner is, that this isn't something that you're going to fix overnight. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe you'll listen to this podcast and you're just like, fuck, I'm cured. That's awesome. But, you know, more likely this is something that's going to take some time. Yeah. But like so many things, I think that the most important thing in terms of getting through this is to make sure that you and your partner have an understanding that you're on the same team, that both of you want to feel special, that neither of you like wants to feel shitty and complain all the time, that you really do believe that both of you want to feel special to the other person, and also that you want your partner to feel valued. So from both sides of it, both in terms of your own, I want to feel special, I want to feel good in this relationship, and then also, hey, I want you to feel good. And if you both can really come together as a team, knowing that both of you have this same goal, even if it's a little hard sometimes and it takes you some time, you know that you're going to get there and that you have each other's support.
But also to build on that, keep in mind that other people involved are also going to want to feel special at some point as well.
Very true.
That you kind of have to come at it with a mindset of knowing that there's going to be space for other people to feel special as well.
Sure, definitely. But to know that in making someone else feel special, that their goal, your partner's goal, is not to make you feel worse or to try to take advantage of you. That's what I mean about coming together, to really have that understanding that you're working together as a team. Not that they're not also on teams with other people, or that you're not. But that, you know, both of you have each other's best interests at heart.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you feel special?
You know, I feel a little special. I think it's something to work on, though. It's not going to get fixed overnight. Thank you all so much for listening. We're excited to have this amazing community of patrons on Patreon. If you want to become part of that, it's patreon.com/multiamory, and you can join our community there. We've got a lot of exciting things coming up. We will keep you posted about all of those as well. If you want to write to us, you can do that at info@multiamory.com. You can tweet at us at Multiamory. You can write to us on Facebook or visit our webpage, multiamory.com. Thank you so much.
I'm Dedeker.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Jase. Thank you. We'll see you next week.